Ah, okay. Well, I guess actually that's what we're going to be drawing here. We're going to be drawing a little bit of this kind of stuff. All the wires and the mechanical details, the bolts, the hoses, all the vents, and everything else that kind of adds that little finishing polish, the cherry on top of your bot. That's what this unit is about. So let's jump in here. Okay, guys, we've got a whole bunch of references in front of us here, and some of them are, well, we've already used them before, a couple of them, right? But I think what's important is how we're going to use them here. We're not looking at the weaponry and stuff like that, right? What we're looking at is some of the smaller, more important, not important, smaller, more overlooked details, right? So here's some things that I find fascinating about this, right? Here is a panel, right? And we can have a series of panels. I'll even divide it like this. And this panel looks like a panel, I guess. It just actually, it looks like a kind of an angled square right now, right? How do I then bump this into some type of actual recognizable panel? Well, one thing you could do is start to add some type of bevel into it. You know, some slight indent between the paneling, right? Where they could be affixed together or where they might bevel down. You can even add like bevel on all four sides of the panels, right? So the panel has a low point and a high point to it. You can have the gutter of the panel, right? Where, for example, in between your tiles and stuff like that at home, you might have those caulked gutters. And you might have bolts. Now, how you want to do your bolts, kind of up to you. You could do them in each corner and as if the panels were, you know, riveted into those sections. Or you can maybe, like, for example, along the bottom. Well, that's now a choice. I'm reinforcing the bolt pattern along the bottom because I want it to be stronger, right? Maybe more stuff gets kicked up into the bottom there, right? So when I'm looking at this tank, I've already looked at the weapon systems. I've already looked at the movement of it, right? The treads and everything like that, those kind of designs. But now I'm looking at the smaller pieces, right? Looking at hinges that hold this flap together or something like that. So, you know, if I want to have a flap that comes down and maybe it has some little bit of mobility, well then, you know, what do I do? In perspective, I'll put a bit of a hinge here and have a hinge attaching, right? And then I'll bolt those down too. I'm bolting everything on this thing, right? And there, that gives me just that little bit of extra realism that now this panel is stuck on there, right? Another thing that I really like is handles, but I'll get into handles on this next one. I think for right now, I'm going to leave this one alone. I might be coming back to the tank for some stuff. On this one, what I like is how the operator gets into the cockpit. So we've got a ladder system, right? With lots of railings, because it's not just a ladder. You know, I've done that before. I've just put like, okay, here's the stairs, and dude has to walk up the stairs to get in there, right? But he's gonna fall, he's gonna slip, he's gonna trip, he's getting into this in different weather conditions and stuff. So what do? Well, you put a railing system in or something like that, right? You put a railing system in, so it also adds realism to it, right? And it wraps around. So if you've got something that has a driver to it, somebody's popping in and out, put a rail system into it. Also put handles. Now, you know, usually I'm cheap and I just draw handles like this, right? And then I might put something down here and here and more rivets. I could do that. But look, you know, you could do something else with your handles. It doesn't have to be a basic metal handle. There can be a lot of other things that are going on with that handle, right? So make sure that you could have some details in here that you forget about. Like, look at that, even just this, right? I think it's important to have some of these minor details, especially to me, especially for me, that's really what mechs are about. Mechs are about all these little details, right? So another handle, right? We've talked about different types of joints. So that's what this is going to be. This, for those young people out there that have never seen anything like this is how you can roll up your window. But it could also be like, for example, cranking a weapon system or something. You could be rolling it around that way, right? Think about it, that there's lots of different ways to use different types of handles. Okay. And if we go back to the tank, you can see, they've got handles. Maybe just for getting into compartment areas, right? That's another thing that you can add is little hatches or anything like that, right? Hatches with hinges. Gotta love those hinges. And of course, handles. Hatches, hinges, handles. I'm going for Triple H. Okay. Moving on for details. We've got bolts, we've got hatches, hinges, all this kind of stuff. We've talked about exhaust systems. What I want to talk about is front end air intake. When you've got a front grille and it's a combustion engine, when you've got a combustion engine, often you're going to need an air intake, right? So what you could do is just make it a slatted front grille. You can do different patterns over it. You could put some type of protection over it, right? It depends how much you have to intake. Imagine if this was a massive double engine or triple engine machine, right? Basically, the engines are being repeated here or something, right? Well, how cool would it be to have all these grills coming at you, right? Something about that. And then you could even put, I don't know, like the company, your branding of Space Marine or Space Mining Company or something like that in there as well, right? So use grills as an intimidating factor. I think grills can be really cool, and they can be really intimidating if you kind of get into them right. Okay. We've talked about the wheels before. Use details like that. I think it's really important. Moving on, we can see what I like in this one. This is an armored vehicle versus an unarmored. Usually, not too many people are assaulting farmers, right? This is his window system in this one, right? It's pretty big. Tons of visibility all the way around. Gets to see what he's towing, gets to see the wildlife he's running over, whatever. This one, very small, slatted, maybe really thick paned glass for their windows. Horrible visibility, like, they've got a visibility plane here, right? And they've got a visibility plane here, but tons of blind spots that are going on, right? So if you've got tons of blind spots, you can have eyes up top or maybe a camera system, something like that, right? So look for visibility, look for the details, how you would protect a window if it's an armored vehicle. What would you do to give that visibility to your driver? Okay. Other things, once again, I want to point out all the bolt system, but you can have heavy duty lockers at certain points just to make sure you're locking everything in, right? That's another technique. Let's see. We're also talking about, we talked a little bit about hinges, hydraulics, piston or sliding joints. Throw these on if you've got any mechanism that needs to have support. Like, let's say, I don't know, it's something that has to be lifted, right? So you can have your hydraulic system pushing this part up as it lifts up the rocket launcher, right? This could be a bunch of rockets or something like that. Okay. So add in this type of mechanic into the rocket launcher, or into the rocket launcher that lets you aim, right? Next up, talking about vents. We've talked about vents a little bit about for weapon systems, about allowing excess power to go off, right? But whether we're talking about the grill of a truck or a machine or whatever, we're talking about weapon systems, venting. I want you to look at and think about it that there's lots of different patterns. Usually we look at venting as like, okay, it's circular, right? And where's a circular? There we go. We've got circular venting, right? And they could be symmetrical or they could be misaligned, right? It could be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, that type of thing, right? Okay. Or like, as you saw, just all lined up. Think beyond that though. I love this chevron. How cool of a design feature would that be as a venting system, right? This is also, it's repeating here a little bit, right? Does your mech have a design theme to them? And can you incorporate that theme into the vents, right? And so if we scroll up, there's vents on the front grille is a vent in a way, right? There's vents back in the back of this tank here. There's venting systems on the side of this truck, right? For these things, they're a lot more functional, and so they go with a straight slat vent. But for you, I want you to think as you're designing this mech, does the mech have a giant chevron on their chest, right? If so, well, how cool would the vent be if it was done in a chevron thing, right? Is the mech, like half, I don't know, half moon or half circle or something like that? Well, maybe you can incorporate that into the venting system, right? Like have a circle and then just chop it, right? So think about that. Vents are an opportunity to show finesse in design, right? They're an opportunity to show functionality, but also a little bit of stylistic finesse. The other thing that I wanted to show or talk about just a little bit is about cables and hoses. I didn't put all the types of hoses here, but basically what I want you thinking of is like, let's say you've got a pack here and a weapon system here, right? Well, this is so simple, right? Okay, good enough. Weapon system. And there's needs to be a connection. Well, the mech might be carrying this on their back or something like that. This could be a I don't know, atomic energy pack or something like that, whatever creative mind you have. And you've got to think, well, how do I bring the power back and forth, right? So think about wiring. Think about how wiring might look or something. Are there two cables coming out of each one? If there's a large gun that has some special type of energy coming out of it, does it require a hose to bring whatever substance that is? Does it require there's all different types of hoses too. You can make it almost like an accordion hose, right? You can make it a mesh hose. There's lots of different styles you can use. So I want you to think of how you're going to connect sometimes your different systems. This is a system connect, whether it's wires, whether it's hoses. Usually though, with a mech, the exterior, you're not going to see a lot of this, but maybe when the arms move or something attached to the hydraulic system, you might see some of that. And these types of mechanics will help add to the realism of what you're going after here, okay? So guys, a super quick unit about adding a few little bolts, hoses, vents, wires, all this kind of stuff, a few little bits of mechanics to make your mechs more believable. Hope this helps.